Hi, this is Kevin from Rebuilders.net. Today we're going to talk about anger, what it is and why it matters. So I remember when I was going through my divorce, one of the things our marriage counselor had said to us over and over was anger is a secondary emotion. The other thing she said was the flip side of the coin of anger is hurt. And she never really explained it that well, and it took me a while to be able to get used to seeing this in my own anger and understand what it is. So I want to talk about this not only from my own sake, but for everybody that out there, because we do these. You can take this self-test on our website, and I would bet 90% of those tests come back as the number one thing people that have a low score on is anger. Anger is a boundary emotion. In other words, what we mean by that is that anger is something where you're living your life, and then something's suddenly not okay. You've crossed a boundary. Now suddenly there's this point of saying something's not okay. The result is anger. So anger is the result of what we would also call judgment. And I'm going to talk more about this in on another day. But fundamentally, that's the point. That's the line where we hit this point of saying, I'm angry. I'm mad. Something's not okay with me. That's judgment. There's a point in time when something happens. Now, for a lot of people, the way when I talk to them about anger, what they say is, I'm just angry. I'm just mad. The other thing is, as we start to talk more about that, is that people always say, he did this, she did that, he or she said something, did something, anything like that that makes me mad. Well, the thing about anger is that for relationships is that there are things that happen all the time that create anger. There's I would call judgments, right? This point where somebody, one of you or the other person does something and it makes you mad. Well, for most relationships, when I talk to, say, the husband about what happened, he tells me all the things that she did wrong, or she said, or she, whatever. There's a long list of things. And then I talk to the wife from the relationship, and she talks about all the things that he did wrong, or things he said wrong, or whatever it is. It's a little bit like the Hatfield and McCoys. There's always this long trail of judgment that happens between each person that they're not okay. And sometimes those things get resolved, but it's the really big ones, the ones that don't get resolved, that carry on. And for a lot of times, things that happen in relationships, whether, I've had people say things like, I got hurt and she wasn't there to support me, or he wasn't there to help me, or they took all the money that we had saved up, or he or she was unfaithful, whatever it is. All of these things, there's usually some level of something happens that's a really big one that causes that crosses a line for somebody and they're angry. So that's where anger comes from, and there is no point in time to say, well, I'm only angry about this. Because anger is this thing where it's a valid emotion. It's simply the result of that boundary being crossed, that something happens and now I'm angry. So for a lot of people, they stay in this place of, I'm really angry. It bugs them so much. It's something they don't like, being angry, but they are. They don't like how they were treated, or what was said, or what was done. And some people will actually hide their anger from themselves. They're angry. They don't like what happened or what they did, but they blame themselves for being angry. They say it's not okay. But underneath it, they're angry. Okay, so once you understand that their anger is legitimate, that you can accept that this is something that's real, it's a valid emotion. The next thing to understand is that with anger, there is this spectrum of anger. There are all of these different kinds of anger for people. And it goes from, irritated up to enraged. And at some point in that anger, there's a line where things get tipped. Mentally, we go into what some people refer to as your lizard brain. You lose the ability to be reasonable and rational about something, to talk legitimately about something or to understand it. We stop thinking and we go into our most basic instincts. We react, we respond, we lash back out, or we turn away, or we get physical, or whatever that is. People have a different place of how much they can handle before they do this. And there's also anger, by the way. I know this and I see this with my kids. There's times where I'm bothered by something. I'm a little bit angry underneath something. And then they do something and it's the tipping point for me. I get angry then beyond what I should, but there was this layer of anger underneath it. So, there's anger is one of those things that's not just something happens once and boom, you're angry. But there's a lot of things that build up to that. And relationships are like that, right? Where you get angry about something or something bothers you a little bit and finally you explode. You let it out. And people do this in different ways. But it's important to kind of see that there's a spectrum of anger, of different reactions that we have. Now, one of the things we talk about in our programs is the fact that there's 5 different ways that we express anger. And the way in which way you do it matters a lot. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not, those kinds of things. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but just understanding that how we express our anger is different for everybody. How do we, once we deal with it, how we express it, then how do you respond individually? So some people are very quick to, they get angry and then they're done. Other people get angry and it takes a long time for that to subside within themselves. Okay. So, the other thing that's helpful is when I mentioned earlier how anger is what's called a secondary emotion. It is this thing that is, people identify with it that I'm angry. But underneath it, this is why it's secondary, is it's actually kind of like the shell around hurt that's inside of it. So for most people, anger is a result of fear or confusion, anxiety, lots of different things that there's something underneath that, right? So if somebody yells at me, I might get angry, but really it's I fear for my safety, or hey, you don't need to raise your voice about this, or whatever it is. But I'm kind of confused as to why you would be so angry at me. That kind of thing is what comes out for anger. And that's why it's secondary. There's really something underneath that. And there's actually layers underneath those layers, and it goes deeper and deeper. There's a lot to anger. And so it is this thing that we struggle with trying to understand. But I want to give you the other side of when you understand this anger, how important it is to deal with this. So if anger is judgment, if it is this line that crosses, the opposite of anger is love. And what I mean by that is when I describe love in terms of just feelings, I would call love then being acceptance, right? If judgment is anger, well then love is non-judgment. So people in relationships talk about, I'm angry at this person. That means disconnection. The opposite of that is connection with somebody. Now, in divorce, people hold on to their anger. They justify that I'm still angry because he or she did something to me. But the important thing is that anger hurts you more than it hurts the other person. And there's this great quote which goes to this. Anger is like drinking poison, hoping the other person will die. That's a super important one to absorb and to understand. That we stay angry and it hurts us. I see people that are so angry that they have physical conditions because of it. There's stress. There's not sleeping. it gets in the way of relationships. It gets away of their ability to focus, to be present with their children. There's so many things that anger can get in the way of. And I know I had that. I remember early on in my divorce, when my wife would come to pick up the kids, and being so angry at her. And it really, underneath that, was the hurt. It was so hurt that we were getting divorced. That pain I turned into anger. I couldn't spend more than 2 minutes having her in the house with me, because I was so hurting and I was so angry and I didn't know what to do. The only thing I could do was want to lash out at her, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be mean, but I didn't know what else to do because I was hurting so much inside. So anger is really the expression of hurt inside. And if you look at it as, this is not healthy for me to stay angry. It's okay to be angry or to get angry. But if you're ongoingly angry, or if you're trying to justify your anger or continue to use it to motivate you, it can be a really destructive thing in your life. People make bad decisions because they're angry. I know a guy who keyed a car because he was angry at his ex-girlfriend. He keyed her new boyfriend's car, and he ended up going to jail for 3 weeks. Lost his job, had to move in with his mother. Like, those kinds of things happen, and we blow up our lives because we're angry, and we think that I'm going to feel better if I continue to be angry or I do something. So working through anger is so, so important. And it is one of those things that sticks until you learn to do it. Now, the other side of when you learn to actually work with your anger, for a lot of people, what they learn in our programs is about not so much about just learning how to not be angry. We do teach that. But they learn how to use their anger rather than letting it use you. That's a place to be from, is to start embracing those emotions that are, quote, difficult, that are hard to deal with. If you can take this stuff and go, something happened here for me. I'm angry. Wow, what was it that caused it? I understand it. I understand how I work through this stuff. I understand what the process is that's going to make this work. Those kinds of things are super important. They change your life. That now you aren't trying to hide your anger, avoid your anger, suppress it, put it away. Truly, to be able to use that anger in a powerful way that makes life better for you and for the people around you is a fantastic place and a way to live that's super valuable. Now, how do you do this? Well, this is what Rebuilders does. Anger is just one thing that we do, but it is a really important one. So we have our 10-week workshop where we're working on this. That's week 4. People work through this stuff in 1 week of learning really how to do it so much better. They understand so many things that I've talked about here today and more. And you get one-on-one attention of being able to talk through this stuff and let go of the anger in your divorce. We also have a digital course on our website at rebuilders.net called the Feel Better Fast course. And it goes much more into depth on what anger is. It also goes into other feelings that are the difficult ones. The sadness, surprise, shock, disgust, all of these different things that we all struggle with, fear, that debilitate us, that have us get stuck. This one course is super cheap for dealing with it. I remember reading lots and lots of books about anger, trying to do everything I could during my marriage to deal with my anger. I didn't like it, but I was angry, and I didn't understand it. Finally now, after years of struggling with it myself, we have a course that teaches you about this and gives you true, actionable ways to get through it. So I highly recommend that course if this is your struggle and you want to deal with the grief and anger and the other emotions that you're dealing with. Or sign up for one of our workshop classes, the programs that are really going to work through this with you, with a group of people, and so much more. So I hope this was helpful talking about anger. Please let me know what you've learned from this and how more I can support you in this difficult time in your life. For those of you watching this on video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button and let me know you're watching. And please also, if you hit the bell, then I know that you're going to get this as soon as I release it. I want this information to be valuable for you, and I want to help you live the best life possible. That's all for today. Thanks so much. I enjoyed talking to you, and I'd love to talk to you about your anger. I know that sounds crazy, but I do really enjoy helping people through one of the most difficult emotions. Take care and talk soon. Bye-bye.